Hey guys, so my name is Stephen Tamman, and today I'm picking up in the second part of this series on learning how to program, kind of how real software developers do. And what the focus of today is going to be, and hopefully today will be short, is just going to be talking about what makes me qualified to make this series about learning program. So basically, why would anyone ever want to listen to me? What are my qualifications? Things along those lines. So as I say, hopefully a lot shorter than the first video in this series here. So I'm going to start out just by stating my background and biases, what sort of things I do, what my proficiency is in, and, I guess by way of contrast, what things I don't do. I'm going to talk about some of my history, my past in university, and so on. So my first programming language was MATLAB when I was at Georgia Tech for a couple of years. And then I switched schools because I decided I wanted to do some humanities stuff as well. And I ended up a triple major. And after I graduated, I got a job working for the Air Force here. Now I'm kind of a team lead now, and I also help onboard some of the new people as well. Kind of just fell into that pattern, I guess, because I like it and I'm good at it. And then my team in general, what we work on is C# web apps. So we have a C# API on the back end, and then we have Angular on the front end, and we're database first with Microsoft Entity Framework Core. So this is the gist of it. I'll go through pretty rapid fire here and just kind of cover, well, what makes me someone that perhaps you might want to listen to when we're going through and setting out on this task to learn programming in the most efficient way possible, right? Do I know what I'm talking about? Do I have any background in this, right? Why would anyone want to listen to me? So first thing I'm going to do is just try to state my background and my biases up front. And as I say here, I kind of always wish other people would do this more transparently, right? It's kind of hard on the internet sometimes to figure out whether someone knows what they're talking about or not, because lots of people write as if they know what they're talking about, but sometimes maybe they're not really qualified or whatever. So to avoid hypocrisy, I'm going to try to do this same thing myself here. If you'd rather, you can have a look at my resume. In this link here, I'll probably link it down in the description of the video as well. I don't think I'm particularly special, right? That's not the point of this. It's not why I'm making this. I'm not trying to make myself look more impressive than I actually am. But on the other hand, I also don't think I'm particularly unqualified either. So, I do have practical experience. I do work as a software developer in the real world, et cetera, et cetera. So all this info here, and basically the whole point of this video, right? If you're going to take one thing out of it, this is what you should get from it. All this info is just so people can decide for themselves if they think I'm worth listening to, right? So before they go sit down and spend hours watching this series that we're putting out here, well, do I seem like a competent, trustworthy person, someone that is worth spending time on? So should be very upfront here that I'm basically a nobody. So that wasn't already obvious from the fact that I only have like 5 subscribers or whatever on the YouTube channel, right? I'm like not some famous celebrity programmer or anything like that. I don't work for some hotshot company doing hotshot things, like some sort of exceptionally brilliant programming wizard or anything like that. I'm just a normal guy working a pretty normal job. And so from that perspective, doesn't mean I don't have anything valid to say. It's just, I should be clear that that's where I'm coming from. That's what my background is, really, more or less. All right. So as to my history, my first programming language was actually MATLAB, right, which is actually kind of notable for, among other things, that MATLAB is indexed at 1, while most other programming languages are indexed at 0. So that had a real learning curve when I picked up Python as my second language. But I took MATLAB when I was still an undecided engineering major at Georgia Tech. So I actually spent like 2.5 semesters completely undecided. I took a class for undecided engineers, couldn't decide if I wanted to be a mechanical engineer or an electrical engineer. I actually ended up in industrial engineering, which is kind of the thing modeling process efficiency and that sort of thing. I'm very math heavy, very probability heavy. So I ended up taking, I think this was my second year, I think, like third semester of college, a Python class dealing with data manipulation. And this was by the time I'd formally declared myself as an industrial engineering major. So this was a class dealing with data, web scraping, processing data, that sort of thing. So both these classes, so my initial MATLAB class and then also this data class for industrial engineering, well, both of these classes were actually programming classes for engineers, right? So kind of teaching people how to code because they were going to use the code, but they weren't computer scientists themselves, right? And so I can theorize here, I don't know in particular, but this may be some of the reason why I have so little patience for the theoretical side of things, is because, well, when I learned how to program, I learned how to program as an engineer. And engineers are kind of famously practical about things, right? They'll let the physicists deal with the formulas and stuff, and they'll just use them. Well, that is very much the mentality that I take towards things. And part of that perhaps is because that's what my background is. I learned how to program as an engineering student. And then eventually I ended up switching schools and became a computer science major, but I really learned how to code as an engineer. Now, with this being said, this programming classes for engineers, it may sound like I'm singing the praises of this sort of thing. Well, I actually thought the way that both of these classes were taught was really dumb. I thought it was super inefficient. It shows that I'm just hard to please, right? I certainly laid into college-based computer science education plenty in the introduction, so I shan't belabor the point here. But the point is here that I learned how to program as an engineer, kind of getting the just figure out what works approach hammered into my head from the beginning, probably. And perhaps that's a little bit the way of why I'm so dismissive of having to learn so much of the theory behind other stuff there. So that was my first language, MATLAB, and then Python following soon after in my second or third semester there. And after that, I didn't actually end up doing computer science at Georgia Tech, even though eventually I decided that's what I wanted to do. But Georgia Tech does have a very good program. Actually, it's certainly top 10 in the country. I don't know, it might be even closer to higher than that in computer science, but very, very good program. But I actually decided that I wanted to do some humanities stuff in college. So I ended up transferring to the University of Georgia, so the other flagship university in the state of Georgia here in the United States, where I triple majored in ancient Greek, so like the language, ancient Greek, classics, so that's more like history and culture of Greece and Rome, and computer science. So I had 2 humanities majors and then computer science as my third major. So I do have a bachelor's degree, a bachelor's in science and computer science, along with 2 bachelor's of arts degrees for the other 2 majors from the University of Georgia. I graduated December 2019. I was actually in college for 5.5 years because I switched my major like 3 times initially, and then I switched schools, and some classes fell through when I switched schools because not everything transferred perfectly. And then I had 3 majors at the new school. I actually ended up graduating with, it was something pretty ridiculous, like 208 credit hours or something. Most degrees are like 120. My advisor told me she actually had never seen someone who had as much credit as I did. But at any rate, I do have a bachelor's degree in computer science. It was the major I always knew that I was going to work in after I graduated, but I ended up at the University of Georgia because I decided that I wanted to learn Greek. I actually took like 2 semesters of Hebrew as well, on top of all the history classes and stuff for classics. So those were very much things that I was passionate about, things I wanted to do in college because I knew I'd never get to do them again. So that's why I ended up at the University of Georgia. Now, the University of Georgia doesn't have a bad CS program by any means. Georgia Tech's just better. But nonetheless, that's why things happened the way they did for me, because I had these humanities majors and ended up triple majoring in college. So that is my university college background. And then after that, I did get a job here. So at time of this video, which is September 2021, I work for the United States Air Force as a team lead in a software engineering group. So I'm still very much an active developer on my team. So I still code things and push into our code base and do peer reviews and stuff and pull requests. But I actually also help our PM sequence and task out the work. So this is like avoiding dependent tasks that block each other, figuring out what the highest priority development tasks are to get done what the customer wants and things like that. I also run the sprint planning meetings for my sub team here. I think we have about 5 people on my team now. So we have sprints because we do Scrum, which is an implementation here of the Agile software development philosophy. We are an Agile software development team. We have pretty quick turnaround on the demos for the stuff we do to clients and stuff like that. But I'm basically the person who runs the sprint planning meetings here. So I don't have tons and tons of authority. When I say team lead, I kind of always feel a little bit guilty saying team lead and putting that on my resume, because it's not like I'm not a team lead, because I am, but it really is more of like a organizing the work sort of thing rather than having like management powers over people or whatever. I also seem to have kind of ended up on my team with a somewhat more of a hand in training new people. Our team's actually pretty young. We have a lot of new guys. It's good, because we kind of get to shape people. They don't come in with lots of opinions, but with people coming out of college, I kind of ended up training new people, I think, some more than other people on my team. And as I say here, guys, kind of probably just because I like it. I'm reasonably okay at it, I guess. I don't know. I don't want to sound arrogant, but I've ended up spending time with some of the new guys on our team, bringing them up to speed as well. So that's what I do right now in my job working for the Air Force as a software engineer. Now our team, so this was kind of like what I do specifically in my job, but our team does full stack business oriented web apps. So, we work for the Air Force. There are plenty of teams on base who write the code that runs on airplanes and, the weapon systems and the flight codes and all that great stuff, the so-called operational flight programs. But my team in particular actually does business oriented web apps. So Department of Defense, is my formal employer, but the Air Force and all of these other systems have a lot of logistics and stuff that goes into it. And so that's kind of the stuff that we do, the business-oriented web apps here. And so we use Angular on the front end and a C# API on the back end, and we are code first. So we do our SQL Server database using Entity Framework Core. So we write all of our models in C# and then let the database ORM handle, or the object relational mapper handle, the creation of all the SQL tables and all that great stuff. So that's the tech stack that I actually have professional experience in. It's limited basically to full stack web apps in C# and Angular. Before the project that I was currently on, I did some client server C# stuff. So MVC, model view controller, web apps, and just C#, where we were writing the templates and stuff in C# on the back end rather than having a dedicated front end like Angular. So I do have some experience in that too, but by and large, my professional experience is limited to C# and Angular. So there you go. Like I said, shorter this time here. I'm just going to be kind of upfront and stating where I'm coming from, what my experience is, university-wise and then work-wise, and the sort of languages and stuff that my team does. So I did learn, more than just web development, full stack stuff in college, So, for example, I took databases and algorithms and operating systems and networks and all of this other stuff. So, I do have some degree of background in other things, but by and large, where my professional experience lies and what I'm most familiar and comfortable with are these things here, the full stack web app development sort of stuff. That won't be the only thing that we go over in this series, but that's definitely where my biases lie. So having been clear and upfront about that, hopefully this has been helpful. If you're kind of curious about where I come from or why you might want to listen to me, well, that's the basic stuff about me and my relationship with programming. So hopefully this has helped give people a little bit more insight into my background and my experience as a software developer.